in here. This is James Rowland. Everybody else has been in here. This is his second presentation, and he's going to be teaching you guys on how to prepare for a conference presentation. So, presenting next year.
Well, yeah, I hope to see you guys on the program next year. Just to add a little bit more about my background, as somebody's already heard, I have had the chance to present both at the state, regional, and national levels multiple times. So one time, twice, and then 2 poster presentations. So it's had a little bit of experience around here, and it's kind of grown into a love of the idea of public speaking and presenting at conference. It is an opportunity that, for the most part, we don't get until much later into our academic careers. How to prepare a conference presentation was really a workshop that it did for Valencia, and I also had the chance to do it at Palm Beach State as well, which kind of gives a little, just trying to give some ideas and some thoughts about what goes into the presentation. Kind of some first, like, what are some ideas you think there might be a difference between presenting in a classroom, like in a speech class, versus presenting here at conference? Let's see. The interest of the audience is one possibility, because it's the case here, the audience is self-selected. So it's the case that it isn't going to be 36 people saying like, why did I sign up for this damn speech class again? It's going to be where they have an interest in hearing what you have to say. So that's going to be that's one major difference that you can find between classroom versus conference. The audience, their education level. So in a classroom, you're likely only going to have one faculty member who have either some form of graduate degree. At a conference, it's easy to find where you'll have like a handful of faculty and staff, especially if it's a professional conference rather than an honors conference. It's going to be people in the field that have years in the field and may have ideas to contribute to your research. Time constraints. This is going to be one that can play a little bit into it. Is what sort of time period are you working with? Is it going to be where it's class timekeeper, this is about, you have 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or is this going to be something where you have a 10 to 15 minute presentation, or is it the case, a 50-minute presentation, or so on? Because at conference, you're likely going to find longer presentation times. Like even now, our typical presentation time now is like between 10 and 12 minutes, which is about 3 to 5 minutes for Q&A is kind of your typical time at a conference presentation. Where a lot of speech classes, it's a 5-minute speech, a 6-minute speech, an 8-minute speech, generally not getting that 10-minute, half-an-hour mark unless it's a group presentation. How questions and answers would be handled could be different. You're not always going to find a huge question and answer period, especially on speech day when it's like, okay, we have 8 students that we have to get through today. You're not going to run into that time where you're going to have lots of questions and answers. But at conference, you do have to be prepared for handling whatever questions may come up and so on, and knowing your topic well enough to say, okay, I'm going from there. The one thing, as you've seen here, which you won't necessarily find as much in the classroom, is having moderators, whether they be faculty, staff, faculty, students, and so on. Well, at least to me, those were like what I was thinking of, is thinking, okay, what makes this different than presenting in the classroom? Benefits of presenting at a conference. Of course, then this is one, even though that one of the ones I tend to take because I'm not a networker, but of course, one of the benefits of coming to conference and presenting at conference would be being able to network with people at other schools and also share ideas, maybe begin establishing collaboration for future projects and so on. Experience. Any chance to go out and speak publicly, and especially to eventually get away from the old-fashioned idea of I have a full census outline, I have to stand behind a podium, and being able to get it where you're just speaking off the cuff is a very good trait to have. Because I think, is that, from my observations, the only 2 things in your academic career and probably professional career that you'll never get away from. One, probably you never get away from some form of math, in one form or another. You might be able to minimize it, but never get away from it. The other, you're never going to get away from talking to people. So, sorry to break that news, even though it probably isn't news. Of course, practicing and refining your communication skills is always useful. And especially when you're in today's world of PowerPoint, or even just not just PowerPoint, but designing the handouts, figuring out, okay, this could be what would be useful for my audience to take home. This might help them. It's a creative and critical thinking outlet. Have to have some of the buzzwords in there. I'm starting to get into what usually composed of a conference proposal, which would be the presenter's identifying information, the presentation type, the details on the presentation, what equipment, if there are any special equipment needs, co-presenters. Didn't hide those slides. So like the presenter's identifying information, it's going to be like whoever the lead presenter's name in a lot of cases, or the first presenter's name. In some cases, you will find in professional conferences, especially titles and so on. What sort of role? I mean, because even though I think with this coming next year, we'll be taking it out, but even like on our conference proposal now, we do ask like, are you a student or are you a staff and faculty member? Which, I mean, there's reasons for that, but it's not really a strong reason. But especially with this, if it's a role in a professional conference, it's more likely to be found because it's trying to figure out, okay, am I a researcher? Am I a business? What are you? And then, of course, contact information to say, welcome, we'd love to have you come and present at our conference. Which is really emails handy. Or, yes, would you mind looking over your proposal and make sure we have everything printed correctly for the catalog before it goes to print? Affiliation, which in this case, which could be like a business, it could be a university, and so on. Presentation types. Now this is one that's definitely, this will be coming clearer on our conference proposals. But for me, the major presentation type should be like a podium presentation, which is what the previous session was, where it's like a 10 to 15 minute, generally about one presenter. It doesn't have to be. Generally, objectives would be, it could be informational, research, it can be where, research, informational, a conference paper, which is, I'm not sure if any of you went and attended the science research papers for the junior, senior, well, the freshman, sophomore, and junior, senior this morning, but where basically they read an excerpt from the paper or summarize a written paper, which in some cases, to me, I don't always like some of those presentations because you still, with some students will get here and actually read their paper, which I guess is an acceptable form of presentation, but communications major in me saying like, you guys can do so much better. No, you're not supposed to read your paper. You're supposed to present key points from your paper. Lengths, in this case, is generally between 10 and 15 minutes. Number of participants, I generally say with a podium presentation it's going to be one, but it's one of those means it can go like 2 or 3 people in some cases. Panel presentations, this is starting to get into a little different type of beast, which is one thing that it's hoping to clear up. Because generally panel presentations are where instead of having a discussion, it's going to be a couple people presenting, and it could be a discussion between the presenters, each presenting a little bit of a different viewpoint. That's one form of panel presentation. Another form would be where the panel presentation is really used as a longer way to convey information to multiple presenters, because panels are usually given a little bit more time to work with. But hopefully what will eventually happen is panel presentations, especially at Florida Collegiate, will be, you have a couple different, may have like 2 people with slightly different aspects on the research and going from there. So it's kind of having a conversation between the panelists on the topic. So they generally would be considered some sort of subject matter experts. Here generally if you look like at Florida, well, if you look at Southern right now, they have short and long panels. Short panels are like the 20 to 25 minutes, so you get the 2 in a session. Long panels are generally about 50 minutes, so you just have the 1 long panel in a session. So I was saying, like, to me, number of participants with a panel, it's going to be at least 2 people. The minimum is at least 2 people. Generally, it'll be between probably about 3 to 4 people. Expect a long panel may likely have more. Short panel will probably be like no more than 3, because when you're talking 20 minutes and you're having 3 people having a conversation, that's trying to cram a lot into that period. Workshops are fun because to me workshops are primarily to get something where where the presenter gives the audience something that they can take home and work on. This could also incorporate small group activities or other things along those lines, but it's trying to give you a product you can take home and actually do something with, versus workshops, versus the idea of just like an informative podium presentation. Length, this is one of these things that really depends on what the conference allows. I mean, you can have a workshop that's 10 minutes, you can have a workshop that's 50 minutes, you can have a workshop that's all day, you can have a workshop that takes place over several days, depending on what the needs are, and how do you organize the sessions. Number of participants, this can vary also. That's what I mean by number of participants eventually. But yeah. Okay. But this workshop, it can vary, but generally how you're going to be presenting things is eventually breaking it down into a small group, especially for any group activities. But it is one of those things, you can't have an audience of 30 to 40 people. And just like there's podium presentations, panels, it's still like where the average audience would be about 30 people. It's not having to worry about jumping right into the huge keynotes of 200 people at the moment, at least. Posters, which kind of covered a little bit a while ago. Posters are based objective that could where you could really have like a research poster, or where it's kind of just an informative poster where it's just giving it. But the nice thing about posters is it's much easier to get on a conference program with a poster, especially at higher levels. Because as you go to higher levels, like at Southern or especially National Collegiate, you're less likely to get on the program because there's such a demand at Nationals with a conference presentation, unless you're specifically doing like nuts and bolts of honors or very high level, like senior level research and so on. It's less likely to get in that conference program doing a presentation versus doing a poster. So that's one thing to think of, especially as you go on in your careers. It's a little bit easier to get on in a program with a poster. And the length, that's one of those things, depending on the conference. The posters could be up all day, but you might only have to be standing there answering questions. Oh, hi, nice to meet you. Yes, this is what my poster says. For about an hour or so. So not too, but it's where it'll be a constant flow of traffic coming through. Because generally, like here, it's just like out of the lobby where it kind of used, well, just outside here where it used around. And then some of the others are where they actually take an exhibit hall and go from there. So you go up and down the hall. So it's kind of the number of participants, it'll be more like a few at a time. So you could actually have 100 people go by and see a poster, but it's most likely your presentations are going to be to like maybe 3 to 5 people at one time, if not 1 or 2. Performance. This is one we don't technically do, even though we kind of do, because it's the case we just have to classify. But this is one you find at Southern, where it's basically some form of performance piece, either like it could be a physical medium like art, it could be music, it could be dance, short film. Well, especially I feel like if you look at Southern Regional with their proposals, this is basically they offer an area for each of these and have specific categories and restraints for each type of performance piece. With us, we're more likely going to allow it, saying like, with art presentations, they can submit it as a poster. With music or dance, they can submit it as a short film. We actually do, I think, have one college that submitted a proposal to do a dance presentation that's going to take place on Sunday, where it's kind of just a little bit longer podium presentation to allow for that. Now here's the fun and the scary part. Conference abstract. Dun, dun, dun. To me, there's a difference between an abstract and a catalog proposal, or a catalog description. An abstract, especially if you're talking in a research paper, is going to be between about 200 to 250 words. A lot of times with the catalog description, it might convey some of the same information, but it's a lot more succinct. I know probably what we're going to start doing is like limiting 125 words for the catalog, which is basically just the book saying, okay, you want to come to my presentation and this is why. So that's kind of, but an abstract, a formal abstract has specific requirements that you have to follow. A catalog description is a hook to draw you in. which it also, in like the abstract or actually in part of the conference proposal, you'll include your title of your presentation. You'll include what the objective of your study was. So it's kind of an idea, this is what we're doing, this is what we researched, this is what we accomplished. Lengths, about no more than between 100 and 125 words. In some cases, some conference proposals will say strictly cap it off at 100, some might say 150. So it's kind of figuring it out, the nice in-between happy medium. Oh yes, this is one of my favorite ones. With any presentations, prepare for unforeseen consequences. I still remember one of the first times I started out, one of the first presentations I was involved with was with Best Robotics back in 2000. Which is, Best Robotics is a national robotics competition that basically takes place in the high schools. The kids get a box of junk with remote controls and that type of stuff, and we're supposed to build a robot out of it. Another part to that competition is the Best Award, where it's basically we prepare a marketing presentation to the judges, so engineers and so on for the most part. We prepare a presentation booth, so kind of a marketing booth displaying what we did, an engineering notebook showing the engineering process, and all in the spirit of sportsmanship. My team from Wichita, actually, we ran first, I think it was, we went from our regional to nationals. We were getting ready to present to the judges, and no matter what we did, thanks to the computers not cooperating well way back then, we weren't able to get our PowerPoint to work. But thankfully, we did have other things prepared, because we had handouts for the judges, and we also, what we ended up doing for the actual presentation is going back to the archaic form of known transparencies. So it's the case, that's something to think about. But with that, they commented us well, because we tried for a little while getting it working, but pretty much we snapped right on to the next time. You don't want to necessarily let your audience know or see them like get so flustered, what am I going to do? My PowerPoint isn't working. You just want to go, okay, this isn't working. Okay, here's our handouts. Please follow along with our handouts as we get started. So that's the key thing with any form of public speaking. You want to prepare handouts. So that's where it's like, definitely you want to do it there where you're ready. And yeah, this one's also major because another presentation I did early on that it had to do was for nutrition symposium on campus, which actually is where that poster ended up coming from, was it had a PowerPoint with a video, which is still a little bit older version of Office, so it wasn't quite as well. So it worked on my laptop fine, but thankfully I was able to get in there and test it on a machine there, but it actually had to go into PowerPoint and dig around and re-put the video in through the developer mode to get it to work. So there are different times that little things can kind of screw up with that. So it's always better if you can, go to the conference, say, hey, would you mind if we could test this on your system to make sure it works? Or at least, if all else fails, also, if it doesn't work, especially, you didn't get a chance to test it out before the presentation started, what you want to do is just like, okay, the video didn't work, and now moving on. You don't want to waste a lot of time on fiddling with getting things working. And this is one. At one time, I would have been a little bit more about it, but it really is one of these things, taking advantage of animations and what PowerPoint can do to keep kind of a focus on the slide information is really nice. Because it's where, well, as you can see, like dimming the points as they come out. That way it keeps the attention focused on the new points. Some of the entrance animations can be useful. You don't want to overdo animations, but the right amount of animations can be complementary to your topic and complementary to keeping the attention where you want on the slide to support you while you're presenting. Exactly. This is a very important one. Remember, PowerPoint is there to support your presentation. PowerPoint is not your entire presentation. It's just supposed to be it gives you another visual component to what your words are saying and everything else. So it's adding a little bit of visual flair to make you look good. But you're still the one that has to know the content, present the content, and present it well. Put a little bit of fun on that topic.
Okay? There's some things I hate about PowerPoint, and I figure it's kind of my duty to point them out. So here we go. Here's common PowerPoint mistakes. Number one, people tend to put every word they're going to say on their PowerPoint slides. Although this eliminates the need to memorize your talk, ultimately this makes your slides crowded, wordy, and boring. You will lose your audience's attention before you even reach the bottom of your first slide. Please don't do that anymore, please. Number 2, most common. Many people do not run spell check. Big mistake. Nothing makes you look stupider than spelling errors. It's got a red line under it. Recheck the spelling. And finally, I hate this. Avoid excessive bullet pointing. Only bullet key points. Too many bullet points, and your key messages will not stand out. In fact, the term bullet point comes from people firing guns at annoying presenters. Hence the bullet point. Bad color schemes, not good. Clashing background and font colors can lead to distraction, confusion, headache, nausea, vomiting, and loss of bladder control. I can't stay on that one too long. Here's something I've noticed. The number of PowerPoint slides you have in your talk, the less useful your talk actually is. Unfortunately, my presentation is right there. I've also noticed this. People love to pack data into their presentation. They shove more and more data, thinking it's better, but it's not. The more data you have, the harder it is to read your slide, and the effectiveness plummets. Now you can improve the effectiveness by adding some shading and some 3D effects, and then some second order and third order effects. And I know, let's add some labels. That'll help a lot. And that's pretty much every marketing slide I've ever seen right there. Then some like VP of marketing standing there going, it's real clear in Q4. What the hell are you talking about? Now I'm into in animation. People become animators in PowerPoint. You can have things flying all over the place, and that can be good. If you're a visual learner, that will improve the effectiveness of your performance. But if you're easily distracted, more animations and people have no idea what you're talking about. They're just, wow, that is cool, wow. And there's regions here, by the way. There's the simple but effective region. There's the active but confusing, the effective and boring, the active and ineffective, the dull but static region, the busy but useless, the ADD only region, the useful but amusing, the stupid but confusing, the dull triangle, the hyper triangle, the sleepy square, the dizzying pentagon, and everything else I just call pointless motion. That slide right there took me an hour and a half to make, right there. PowerPoint can just suck the life out of you to make it. I've also come up with this. It's a kind of a little science I've invented called font analysis. Basically, the font you choose says something about who you are as a person. There's a huge list of fonts, and you choose one, and that says something about you. So be careful the font you choose. For example, if you choose Courier New, which happens to be my favorite, you're probably organized in structure. If you choose Matisse, it means you're artistic. And if you choose Times New Roman, it means you're lazy, apathetic, and unimaginative, and you always use the default. A lot of Times New Roman people, welcome. We got some more. If you use freehand script, you're a horrible speller, so you try to hide it with a hard-to-read font. Very smart. If you use Gothic, it means you're very pale and you wear black. And if you choose Wingding, it means you're a nerd and you have no life. In fact, if you know what those symbols mean, you will never have a date, trust me. Don't bother.
Just a slight bit of humor on a very important, or at least an important subject to consider when designing.
What is that name of that video?
Let's see. PowerPoint After Death by Don McMillan. But yeah, it's on you. That's one I just subscribed to his channel. It's one of these things. He has a lot of hilarious videos, but because that's one where he was an engineer. One of the ones he engineered and turned into a comedian. So that's where it's a lot of good content. They didn't get a revised version of this in 2010, but it didn't quite fit as well for my topics. But I know a lot of it just for like the little tips and tricks on avoiding wordy slides that I still remember from my early speech classes is trying to keep it like 5 by 5. You have no more than 5 bullet points per slide, just about 5 words each. That's right. It's not always a hard and fast rule, but it's like a rule of thumb to think about. Just keep it short and concise. Whereas this one, this is definitely something that you want to consider when you're designing your presentations, is focusing on how much time you have. Because I still remember it was at a Phi Beta Kappa event, and they were doing speeches, getting ready for the speech contest at regionals. And one of the speakers, who I would consider a very excellent speaker, actually ended up getting cut off from the preliminaries because she ended up not necessarily going way too long. But I mean, it's just something to consider. You want to make sure that you stay well within your time. I mean, you want to be right up. You don't want to be early. You don't want to be late. You want to be as close to spot on as possible in your time usage. Of course, this is also something to consider, and this is where having other classmates and professors come in. Design Q&A in your sessions. Start asking people, okay, what question you think about, look at your presentation, what questions might people ask me? Ask faculty members, okay, can you ask me some questions on this topic? Saying, where can we go from here, and saying, what type of questions can I come to expect? That way you'll learn. That way, when you come to conference, nothing's going to surprise you. I mean, well, something might, but it follows this. Thank you, that was a very interesting question. Just, let me write it down and I can get back to you on that. If you don't know the answer to the question. In a lot of cases you will know, but if you don't necessarily lie, there's nothing wrong saying, that's a very interesting question, let me get back to you on that. And of course, as much as possible in your presentation, be clear and concise. Get the points you're trying to make. Don't linger there too long, even though you can linger a little bit, but not just the right amount of time. Oh yes, and this is one that a lot of people that still remembers even that. I was one of those kids early on, it's like, keep me away from public speaking, keep me away from public speaking. And then guess what happened? The irony, I ended up being a communication studies major. So I ended up enjoying speech call. One of the quotes that I really love, from a blog entry by Seth Godin, who's a marketer and does a lot of marketing, would be, he's on the ellipsis under the ellipsis under hides the most important part of this sentence. I'm under a lot of pressure from myself. When you have a big presentation or a large speech or a spreadsheet, the pressure you feel is self-induced. How do you know? Because that stuff that felt high pressure a few years high pressure to you a few years ago is old hat to you now. Because it used to be hard for you to speak to 10 people. And now it takes 100 or 1,000 for you to fill those butterflies. Because not only do you get used to it, you learn to thrive on it. Unless you're in a James Bond movie, it's really unlikely that the pressure you're feeling is anything but self-induced. What you do is that pressure is up to you. If it's not helping you do great work, don't embrace it. Pressure ignored ceases to be pressure. I mean, I'd say that this is one I say it's true. Because like the first time when I went to National Collegiate, even though it's still like material that I'd already presented in some form or another at other levels, the whole idea of presenting to a national audience versus presenting, oh, I'm presenting to my college. Oh, I'm presenting to students from Florida, just students from Florida. It can have a little bit where it's like, okay, I'm not sure, what the hell did I get myself into now? Now, where do I go? Okay. But really, once you enter it and find out rhythm as you go along, it's the same presentation. That's why you do have to accept that fear. I mean, even like this, it's still going into this. It's still even psyching myself into it and channeling that fear. But it's accepting the fear as normal. Everyone, it's not comfortable putting yourself out there in a lot of cases. You want to analyze. Okay, what are you scared of happening? Is it irrational fear? Is it irrational? How can you reconceptualize all of the audience? They're not there to judge you. In many cases, they've been on the same level as you. They're there because they want to be there. They want to hear what you have to say. So don't let that scare you. They're a friendly audience for the most part. At least I don't see any tomatoes or anything rotting fruit hanging around back there, thankfully. And this one, yeah, for conversation with your listeners, definitely get out behind a podium, not necessarily, make sure to vary your tone of your voice. It's a conversation. It's not necessarily just, I'm behind my podium, I'm hiding behind my podium, here's my presentation notes. Oh, yes, yeah, okay, yeah, make sure to come in. Oops, I forgot that last time. It happened. And of course, well, this is one that's depending on the nature of your presentation. A 10 to 15 minute podium presentation, it's pretty easy to run through it multiple times. When you're talking a 40 to 50 minute workshop, to me that one, it's harder to practice, but it's really, you can practice by knowing your material. Working through it, seeing the general idea of the content, being able to flow, just kind of bring it as you have, do it off the cuff, extemporaneous presentations. Because like this one, when I first did it, it really didn't go through that whole process of running through the presentation multiple times before I presented. It actually just got up and presented it. There's that, the follows, fails, like the tension release, like the breathing in for 3 seconds, holding it for about like 5 and letting it out for 8. Nice deep breath in. Really can't help to loosen up a lot of tension. And there are other breathing exercises too, but that's kind of an easy one, like breathe a nice deep breath in for 3 seconds, hold for 5, let it go for 8. And of course focus, because this is one of those things, once you find your rhythm of the presentations, especially if it's 10 to 15 minutes, it'll be over like that. It's crazy how fast they go by. And this is one of my projects where it's also included in the link there, but I would love any help anyone can provide or any ideas, which is Presenters Toolkit, which is trying to basically a blog that's set up to try to help prepare presenters to present at conference. So it's going to have a couple sample presentations, both posters and video presentations. It's going to have somewhat of a discussion like tips and tricks and other things, but I'm hoping to eventually build it into a community of presenters, so that way it's students encouraging students to basically say, we can all do this and we can all present at conference. And because what I'd eventually love to see is the fact we're like at Florida Collegiate that we either have to add more sessions or we have to be selective. I mean, because even now we don't necessarily have every session filled to capacity. So we got more proposals than we have in the past, but not necessarily where it's every session filled to capacity like we would at National or Southern. Not that it should ever be where it turns people away, but it'd be nice having more sessions to share the research everyone's done. Okay. Now it's open for any questions, answers, dissertations, thoughts. And of course, there's also in your handouts there would be a copy of the presentation.